Hello and welcome to Behind the Reel. Today we have a very special guest with us. She is the CEO of the Professional Pen, which is the first Black owned script consultant agency. Welcome, Shannan E. Johnson.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. Been looking forward to having this discussion with you. So I just want to get us started with for anyone who may be watching out there who's not familiar with the role, can you briefly just explain what it is that you do and why a screenwriter should hire one?
As a script consultant, I help take creatives from idea to pitch, which means I'm your development buddy. I'm the person who helps you develop your content. If you know you have a story or you know you have an idea and you're trying to figure out how exactly to get it on the page, or you're trying to get it from the page to be able to sell it to someone, I'm the person who helps you through that process. I do not help you sell it. I help you prepare it to be sold or prepare it for your competitions. Or I even work with people who are currently in the industry who may be running their own shows, and I help them to ensure that what they're putting on the screen is well executed and impactful.
What inspired you to create the Professional Pen?
Well, it's something that happened without me trying, really. I was a former creative executive. So I began as someone who helped creatives take their ideas from pitch to production. So as a script consultant, I help people go from idea to pitch. As an executive, I helped people to go from pitch to production. I left that job and ended up becoming a performing artist. So I was traveling the world as a touring artist. But while I was doing that, people were still contacting me to help them with their screenplay. So it wasn't something I was searching for. I was not actively trying to stay in that part of the industry, though I knew I would always go back to that industry. And so it kind of became my side hustle. When you're a performing artist, you live a contract to contract life, which means you're in a contract for a month and then you're out. You're in another one for 2 months and then you're out. You're in another one for a year and then you're out. So you're always starting back over. So having a side hustle, having another stream of income is always great. So it kind of became that. And then eventually, when I moved back to Los Angeles, this is a place about who you know. And since I was gone for a decade, I had to start all the way over, regardless of how much experience I had. It did not matter because people didn't know me anymore. Everybody had shuffled, everybody had moved around. And so what I knew was my expertise is in storytelling, period. Nobody can tell me that it isn't. So as many resumes as I was sending out on the other side, I was getting clients. So eventually I said, well, I'm just going to focus on this thing because this is obviously the thing that I'm good at. It's obviously the thing that's giving me traction. So I'm going to put all of my energy into it. And then that's how we eventually came to the Professional Pen. But I started doing it in 2012 ish. And then about 2014, I said, okay, this is the Professional Pen. This is what I do as a side hustle. And then it wasn't until 2018 that I said, and now let's do it full time.
I love that. And I love your background. I love that you went from working as a TV executive to dancing or performing for 8 years. Because sometimes I
Yeah.
think, especially when you work in the entertainment industry, it's so easy to feel like you have to stay confined to one box or like one aspect of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to get your opinion for anyone who may be feeling like that or may be scared to sort of jump into a different field. What kind of advice would you have?
Yeah, so two things. I'm one of those people who says pick a lane, and I mean it. I mean that you have to pick a lane that you are putting all of your energy and focus into so that you can become a master of it, or so that you can get out of it whatever it is you were supposed to be getting out of it. Once you've done that, feel free to jump in another lane and then do the same thing. Most people who are creatives are multi hyphenates. In this particular industry, though, it doesn't necessarily make you better for a job because you have other hyphens that have nothing to do with that job, if that makes sense, right? So out here, the agents work in a particular lane, the managers work in a particular lane, the studios work in a particular lane, the networks work in a particular lane. Therefore, the creatives have to work in their lane in order to be successful. But that doesn't mean that you can't at some point decide, I'm going to jump into another lane. And the way that I look at it is every day you wake up is an opportunity to do something different. You can change your attitude, you can change your perspective, you can change your job if that's what you want to do. Just take the time to hone the craft or learn the skills of whatever that other lane is. Realize that you may have to start from the bottom because you don't have a name in that lane. You have a name in the other lane, right? And then just take the leap. That's all you can do. If you're going to be afraid of it, then don't do it. But then you'll be living in regret. Who wants to do that?
You said it. That's it. I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. But also something that I often think about as well is, like, for example, I started writing just last year, and I come from the land of being in the music industry, and I remember feeling like I don't have a degree in film or television or theater. My degree is in music business. I don't have something even as simple as a Vimeo link. So how do I,
Mhm.
get writers to take me serious, or agents to take me serious when I'm, starting to sort of enter this industry and trying to own it on my craft. So I wanted to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. And I
Mhm.
know that it can sort of, there's a spectrum where you can sort of reach a height of success and then feel
Mhm.
that imposter syndrome. But I think it's also when you're at the beginning. So have you
Right.
ever felt imposter syndrome? And if so, what did you do to sort of get out of that?
Yeah, I think it's something that we all feel, but somebody just gave it a word recently. And maybe it's been around for decades, but the social medias didn't get a hold of it until recently. So now everybody is considering, oh, do I have imposter syndrome? But I think we all go into some rooms and feel like we aren't supposed to be there. I think that's America. I think that's society. I think that pressure of not feeling good enough is something that we all experience at some point. And at the end of the day, just like with any other things that you may be going through with your mental health or with your self-esteem, you have to get to the place of, I'm going to take this risk. I'm good enough. I'm going to try, and then set realistic expectations. I think a lot of that imposter syndrome comes from people coming into the industry and thinking they're Shonda Rhimes and they don't even know what fade in means. You know what I mean? Like, you haven't been here long enough to try to be the thing that you are holding against yourself because you aren't reaching it, right? It's like it's your first screenplay. It's okay that you're not Steven Spielberg. Calm down, right? Give yourself an opportunity to learn. Give yourself an opportunity to fail. And don't think that just because you're failing, it means that you won't ever reach the height of some of the other heavyweights, right? They didn't come straight into it and just, become famous overnight. It looks like that to us because we haven't been living their lives, right? So we just have to set realistic expectations and not get so pulled into what worked for everybody else, because if not, then you're always going to be comparing yourself. And I just think that imposter syndrome lives in that, lives in thinking everybody else in the room has done something different from what you have done, therefore you don't belong to be here. I mean, you don't belong here. And I think we all know that that's not true. So it's just that fight that you have with yourself, like with any other thing that you may be going through. You have to be able to know what you're good at and be willing to learn what you don't.
That is so true. I think that social media definitely likes to take a hold of things and turn them into buzzwords or buzz phrases.
Mm-hmm.
And imposter syndrome is definitely one of those buzz phrases that we've been hearing a lot of over the
Mm-hmm.
past year or so. But I guess that goes into a deeper conversation of once you're in the industry, especially for an entrepreneur who owns their own company. Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel that there's any sort of added pressure to perform at a
I
certain
don't, because
level?
it's my company and I do what I want to do.
That's
Like,
it.
I don't have anybody else to answer to. There is no one out there towering over me saying, well, what is Shannan going to do with her company? It's mine. I get to do what I want. I take on what projects I want. I don't take on what I don't want to do. If people want to work with me, I decide if I want to work with them. And I'm not saying that that's what everybody should be doing, because I don't believe everybody's made to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs need employees, right? So some people have to work for someone. Again, I didn't get into this thing to run my own business. I came back to Los Angeles to be a development executive again. That's what I wanted to do. However, it wasn't happening for me. And guess what? I have bills like everybody else. So I said, well, let me take my expertise and do what I know how to do And I'm one of those people who believes if you're doing the thing you're supposed to do, you'll be successful at it. Right. So I just, put my focus on me instead of putting my focus on, getting into other people's doors. And because of that, I now make my own rules. So no, I don't feel that pressure. Not from the outside. The only pressure I give myself on the inside is because I have goals just like everybody else. Right. So there are goals that I want to reach. There are companies I want to work with. There are coins I want to make. You know what I mean? And I think if nothing else, I had a mentor tell me when I was younger, it's the easy part is getting to the top. Staying on the top is the hard part. That's where the work begins, right? So I have done a lot of work to get to where I am. I am booked, thank God. I have clients coming out of everywhere, all around the world, which is fantastic. Now it's about figuring out how I maintain that, right? Because if anything, the people who are looking up to me are those people who need me, right? So that's where, in quotations, my pressure comes from. I want to make sure that I can be able to give to all of those people what they're coming to me for. I am a resource. But as far as the industry goes, no, I don't feel any pressure from the industry. I have carved my own lane.
That's so well said. And I always like to say that there's somebody that's out there depending on your purpose. If only you would just be courageous enough to
To
step
do it.
into that,
Yeah.
and to do it, because you never know, who's waiting on your talents or your skills or your
Mm-hmm.
contribution
Mm-hmm.
to the world. And it's so easy for everybody post their wins. That's the
Yeah.
land of social media. Everybody posts their wins, but we
Mm-hmm.
very seldomly see the L's. It's not
Yeah.
sexy to post your L's on social media.
No.
So I love that we're having this very candid conversation so that anyone who's
Yeah.
watching this who has aspirations of being in the industry understands that it takes time. Overnight success is not a real thing. It looks
It's
that
not a
way.
real thing. It's not a real thing. It just looks that way. And, you know, having your L's is a part of being human. I don't want them, but I welcome them because that's where the learning is. The learning is not in the achievement. You know what I mean? The learning is
Right.
in the failure because you have to regroup and you have to figure out, okay, what can I do differently next time? Who can I reach out to? Who can help me? You know what I mean? Like it all leads to where it's supposed to be. And I'm just one of those people who believes that. Like I got that L because that wasn't my win, period. It was somebody else's, and my win will be what it is. So I don't allow myself to wallow in the loss, you know. But that also could be just personality stuff. Like I don't want to wallow in the
Yes.
loss. I'm just going to, keep it moving, but also not look at it. I mean, you have to be able to be honest enough with yourself to understand, do these L's mean that this thing is not for me? Because there are a lot of people who are going after something that isn't necessarily their purpose, and there is this little voice on their shoulder who's saying, hey, you should be doing that. But you as a person is saying, no, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And those L's may be the thing that are trying to open your eyes to the fact that you're putting your energy into this thing, but if you would only put your energy into that thing, you could find the success that you're looking for. And I don't mean success just by money. I mean the fulfillment, you know what I mean, the passion, the everything else. So sometimes those losses are speaking to you to say, hey, you got a lot of energy and you're wasting it here, but it could be more well utilized over here. We just have to know what we're listening for.
Definitely. And learn to listen too, because sometimes, the spirit leads you and tells you you probably shouldn't be doing this. But I think it's easy for us to sometimes confuse the thing that we're passionate about as being our purpose. But
Purpose.
that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean it. That's a lesson that I just recently learned,
Mm-hmm.
not too long ago. Was just because I'm passionate, about being an artist manager doesn't mean that I need to be an artist manager.
Right. Because you
Um,
could manage artists in a whole lot of different ways that don't necessarily give you that title. They're like, for example, my mother has been telling me since I was a child, to get my teaching certificate. She wants me to be a teacher only because she knows that teachers are always necessary. Now, I have a natural skill set as a teacher. I do not want to be a teacher. Okay. Like, I don't want to work in primary schools at all. I don't want to be a part of the school system. I don't want to look at everybody's children every day. I don't want to do that. However, being a script consultant is me being a teacher. And so even though I was avoiding being a teacher this whole time, I then ended up starting my own company that says, hey, let me teach you how to do screenwriting. Hey, let me teach you how to deal with the business of Hollywood. So my natural skill set, which is my purpose is to be a teacher. In every situation that I'm in, I end up being that mediator person, that teacher person, that responsible person. So that is my purpose. I just was able to find an intersection for my purpose to meet one of my passions, because writing is only one of my passions. As we know, I was a performer. I love being on stage, but I also had to say to myself, but being on stage isn't paying me what I'm worth. I'm giving X amount of time, but I'm not getting back from it the thing that I need, because I care about community wealth. I care about generational wealth. I care about all of those things. And I'm not able to do that by being on the stage. So I have to make a decision to not be on the stage in order to get the other things that I want in life. So we have to take the moment to just step back and say, what is it, that's my purpose? What is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that I want? Because there are people whose everyday job is helping them to get the lifestyle that they want, helping them to save the money that they want. And then they do their passions on the weekends. You know what I mean? So not everybody is going to do their passion for a living. It's all about perspective.
Definitely. And success isn't the sacrifice, especially when you're starting out and your entry level. The pay is not going to be what you would hope, for it to be. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when you have to have those real adult conversations with yourself and say,
Yeah.
what am I doing here? What can I afford to do? How
Yeah.
can I invest in myself? And whether that's, again, working a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and then on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday and Sunday you're busting out scripts, networking, attending events, trying to get a mentor, whatever it is, so that it can pay off later, then that's just as much a part of the process and the journey. And that's not something that we should take for granted, or um, I guess try to rush. There's no
Mm-hmm.
elevator. There's no elevator
No,
to it.
there isn't. And social media will have us thinking so, because
Definitely.
people think that viral, going viral equals you made it. you know.
Exactly. I do want to shift us just a little bit, and talk about the future of the industry and the impact of the industry, especially after this summer. 2020 was a wild year.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it was a year of devastation. But for some, I would say it was a year of enlightenment, and I mean that in a sense of the blinders came off
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people. And I would even venture to say, probably involuntarily. I think everybody was
Yeah.
happy in their little bubble, and then that
Uh-huh.
bubble exploded. And then we were left, with a hailstorm
Mm-hmm.
of finally realizing what America truly is. I mean, this summer we had George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, unfortunately, many more. And it
Mm-hmm.
just felt like overnight, you know, Fortune 500 companies and music companies and film television companies are taking to social media to sort of stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. And then once we thought we were done with 2020, 6 days into the new year, we have an insurrection, on the Capitol. So can you just speak a little bit about what went through your mind sort of when that insurrection happened, and how do you think that's going to impact the future of our industry?
Thing is a Hollywood band-aid. I think that you're right. A lot of people got their blinders off and became suddenly woke. However, I still believe that that's by choice. I believe in 2021, if you don't know the history of America, if you don't know that Black people were oppressed simply for being Black, and if you don't know that because our government has decided to ignore it and sometimes rewrite history in history books, that we are still trying to find equity and equality and justice, even for women, because we still aren't paid the same that men are paid. That's information that people know, and they're choosing not to do anything about it, period. And so I think when it came to Black Lives Matter, Of course, they all had to say something. They care about their dollar. If they, Target said something for the same reason that MGM did. They care about their dollar. And I don't mean that in a negative way. All businesses have to care about their dollar. So of course they're not gonna outright alienate the group of people who spend the most in the country and just not acknowledge Black Lives Matter. They can't. So of course they're going to say something. And of course that's going to force them to go in their boardrooms and have conversations about what they can do. The problem is the majority of the people in the boardrooms are not people of color. So they're not coming from a well-informed place. So it usually just ends up with, let's bring some speakers in so that they can talk about their experiences. I shouldn't have to tell you about my experience. It's 2021. You should know what the history of this country is. I shouldn't have to tell you about my experience. It's on television, right? What's happening is we're getting more programs, and hopefully more people will get hired from those programs, but everything has to start at the top. If you aren't putting people in positions of power where their voices actually matter, then the fact that you're hiring people on the lower level doesn't matter. What are you doing with the people who are already there? Are you promoting them? Are you allowing them the opportunity to be in the same tax bracket as you? Because if not, then you aren't making a real change. But I don't think people want to have that conversation. People just kind of want to go, oh, okay, well, we did our part. You know what I mean? And I don't mean, again,
Right.
I don't think that they're doing it consciously to say, we don't want to hire Black people. I just think they're a part of the system. And they believe, oh, well, we don't have the candidates. They believe, oh, well, you're probably not best to work on that show. They believe that because of their own unconscious biases, not because they're sitting in a room and saying, how can we keep Black people down? They're not doing that. They aren't talking about us at all because it's not something that they care about, because they don't have to. Because like you said, they're in a bubble. And so I think, sure, the bubble bursted enough for them to not be able to ignore it anymore. But beyond that, it's just an excuse. At this point in the history of our country, you know what it is. And you could be doing something different every day about it. That doesn't have to have anything to do with programs and anything to do with throwing money left and right. You need people in executive positions. You need people in the boardrooms, because those are the people who are going to help you not make fools of yourself in your marketing campaigns, help you to know that when you put, like, there's a picture that the UN Women's organization put up on Valentine's Day that was drawn by, I don't know how to pronounce her name, hopefully I pronounced it correctly, Sol Kadi, and it has a Black woman by herself while there are other couples in the page. And it's like, of course she didn't draw it saying, I hate Black people, so I'm going to put the Black woman by herself. No, she didn't. But if they had any Black people in the room when they chose the picture, any Black woman would have said, why is the Black woman by herself? Because we know what the false narratives are about us that are in the world. They don't know because they're not paying attention, because it has nothing to do with them. So they're not thinking to themselves, we hate Black women, let's put this out. They're just thinking, oh, this is a beautiful picture, and look at all of the colors are represented. They don't even realize what you're putting into the atmosphere is that Black women are either so strong they don't need anyone, which doesn't help us with Black families, or so angry and attitudinal that they just need to love themselves because they're never going to have anyone. That's what it looks like, because that's what has been taught to us. That's what we've been seeing in the media. But if you don't have a Black person in the room who can have a voice to say that, then you end up with a PR nightmare. So I think, they're all going to do what they think they can. But I don't think they have the right people in the room to help them understand how to make real change. And I personally just feel like they don't want to, because it's not rocket science for me.
Absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance happening. I think that a lot of people are fully aware of what's happening. As you mentioned, it's on TV. You can't, if you're not aware, you're choosing to be, at this point, willfully
Willfully ignorant.
ignorant. Yes, absolutely.
Willfully ignorant.
Yes, absolutely. So when I saw, a lot of these companies taking to social media, the first thought was, somebody's in PR telling them we need to do a blackout. We
Yeah.
need to look like we're standing in solidarity, and
Yeah.
let's go to Twitter and start opening up our DMs so people can submit scripts, or having panels where we discuss race. And I'm like, why
Right.
are we
It's not
still
brand new.
discussing
I don't need to
race?
discuss race with you.
Yes.
Like, if you don't know, you don't want to know. Go read a book.
And more importantly, the Black experience is not monolithic. I don't speak for
No.
all Black people or all Black women. So I don't want
Mhm.
to be on the panel burdened with trying to get you to understand what white privilege is and how that's affected the entertainment industry and many other industries for over 200 years. If you
Yeah.
don't know that by now, I
You
don't
don't want to.
you don't want to. And as you mentioned, I don't see how effective or how genuine the change can be if, you
Mhm.
know, we're now opening up recruitment to entry level positions. And that's the thing that's always, you know, sort of gotten me. It's like, well, we need to recruit talent. Okay, but where are you going to recruit this talent? Who are you
Mhm.
looking to? What
Yeah.
resumes are you asking for? What college, which
They don't.
HBCUs are you going
And
to?
that's my point. You're not recruiting. You're saying like, well, we don't know where the Black talent is. You have an HR department with recruiters. That's their job, to go find the talent, you know? And then a lot of the people who did get moved into executive positions, and obviously not everybody, but a lot of them just got moved into diversity executive positions. So they're still not there to work in whatever other capacities there are in the, you know, at the studio, at the network, at the wherever. It's like, oh, we just hired a such and such of diversity. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in the boardroom?
I couldn't have said it better myself. I feel like drop the microphone. That's it. That was just so well said. Well, I always like to end our interview on lessons that you may have learned from the beginning of your career until now that you're willing to share for the next generation of creatives.
Hmm. Let's see. One of the lessons, and we talked about this at the beginning, was that and I didn't want to listen because I'm a multi hyphenate. I'm a creative. I grew up being a creative, so I have all of the different hyphens, and I didn't understand, and maybe they didn't even mean it in that way, but I didn't understand that what they meant was pick a lane for now, so that you can master something. Because being a master of nothing is unhelpful when someone's trying to pitch you. Right? Like you do need to be able to say, this is the thing that I'm focused on and I'm great at it. And then once you get their attention, you're able to say, now look at this other thing that I have, right? So I think that's one of the biggest things. The other thing, you know, I don't know if this was a lesson. I kind of understood this from jump, but you know, start from the bottom and then make your way up. That's what this industry is. This industry does not care about your education. Sorry for everybody who's out there, you know, getting another degree. You know, I have three, so I'm not, you know, hating on you. I'm just giving you, telling you what it is. I had 2 degrees and I was still the last person on the totem pole, and the person above me didn't go to college. So just know that Hollywood doesn't care. They care about your experience, not your education. I will say that that may start to turn just a little bit, only because our generation was big on college, period. So more people went to film school in our generation. So now you may have more film school graduates who are out in Hollywood. So they may care that the next person went to film school, blah, blah, blah. Mostly, it usually just matters for their own alumni. You know what I mean? It's just another networking group for you. But other than that, it's just start from the bottom and prove yourself. You know, get as much experience as you can, even doing things that you don't necessarily want to do. I know a lot of people come into the industry and they go, I want to be a screenwriter, so I'm only going to write. Meanwhile, you could be PAing, because if you want to screenwrite, then you need to understand production, because your screenplay is what they end up producing. You need to understand what you're asking people to do. You know, you need to see how much time it takes for them to do it. If you want to be a showrunner, you need to understand production, because you have to get your screenplays out every 8 days, maybe less, maybe a little more, depending upon your show. Right. So you need to understand that if you don't get your thing done, then the next people can't get their thing done. And if you can't speak the language of all of those people, then you kind of have handicapped yourself. Right. So there's a whole lot of stuff that you could be doing so that you can learn the industry, period. And it will transfer into your writing, because the writing is this much percent of it, whereas the business is this much percent of it. So just realize that even though you may be you may have something offered to you, and I don't mean it's like a full-on job or a full-on, you know, career or salary position or something like that, but you know, I know some people are like, well, I'm not going to take that because that's not what I'm trying to do right now, even though they're at the very beginning of their career. And it's like, but just think, That's a stepping stone to get you to the thing that you want to get to. So don't stand in your own way and block an opportunity because you think that it doesn't directly take you down your path. Hollywood is one of those places where you're over here, you learn this thing and meet this person. And because you met that person, it takes you to this place, which takes you to that place, et cetera, et cetera. So just be open to all of it.
I love that you said Hollywood does not care about degrees because I wish I would have known that. I have a master's as well from Berkeley, and I spent so much money. I'm not even gonna go in. That's another
I'm
conversation
paying,
for another
girl,
day.
still paying.
Listen, my loans. I'm like, Biden, please go ahead and get rid of these loans because
I don't think he's gonna pick me. I feel like the loans are gonna be taken, and mine are still gonna be here.
yeah, I've sort of just come to the terms with the fact that I'm just going to be paying loans probably for the rest of my life. And I made that decision thinking, okay, I'm going to put Berkeley on my resume. It's a world renowned school of music, and I'm going to get into the industry. And then I was working at Verizon at a call center for like a
Yeah.
year before I finally got hired as at a music company. And I was just like,
And they still didn't care that you went to Berkeley once you got hired.
didn't care at all. Did not even nobody. I had no other Berkeley alumni at this company. Everybody went to Belmont, and I'm just like, I should have just. I could have
Yep.
saved so much money. Nobody cares that you go to college. Like, I'm not.
They
That's
don't.
not to discourage people from going to college. I'm just saying if you can save your coins and intern, get a like you said a PA position, a WA position, start entry level and make those
Mhm.
connections. That's going to carry you so much further
Yeah.
than
Because
putting
you end up
yourself
in
in
the
debt.
same place. You end up in the same place or farther along than those who did go to college. And it's only
Absolutely.
because you spent the time networking. So, like for me, as a person who comes from a family of educators, as a person who went to get a third degree because I couldn't be outdone by all the other people in my family who have degrees, if
Mm.
I could do it again, knowing what I know and doing what I do, I would have gone straight to California or straight to New York because when I was younger, I wanted to be a performing artist, which is why I ended up doing it at some point. But I would have gone straight to New York and tried to get on Broadway, or I would have come straight to Los Angeles and tried to do, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I just didn't have enough information. So I wanted to go to college first of all for the experience, secondly because I'm an overachiever. I decided to go to film school because I'm a person who likes to learn in a classroom setting. So I was already living in Los Angeles. I was already PAing. I was already learning everything. But I'm the kind of person who wants to be in a classroom setting, and I'm an overachiever, so I wanted a third degree. But it's definitely not necessary. And I think as long as you have a plan, as long as you've been saving your money, because New York and Los Angeles are expensive.
Yes, Lord.
So as long as you have a plan and you've been saving your money, just get out here and start working. Like that's what's going to get you to where you need to go. You don't have to go to college, and college costs so much. And college is really only a place for people who can excel at learning in classroom settings. So many people waste their money trying to go to college because they think they have to, when really so many entrepreneurs out here never went to college. They just went and they learned their skill sets in other places, being an apprentice, getting a mentor, being an assistant, whatever it was. And they got the information they needed, and they're, out here making money and living their dreams.
Exactly. And I'm just going to take it one step further before we wrap up. Everything that you said is so true, but I also think that specifically when it comes to people of color and black people, we don't know those things because we don't have the resources or the access to
Yeah.
know those things. When
Yeah.
I'm an army brat, so I've lived somewhere everywhere, and I didn't even know what a screenwriter was. I definitely have never met one until 2 years ago, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
So I think that if these companies really want to be genuine, as we talked about a little bit before, then we have to start getting access and resources and introducing students of color, even from middle school and high school level,
Yeah.
who are interested in writing to the various jobs that they can have in the industry. People think
Yeah.
that you could only be an actor, you only if you want to move to Hollywood, or you want to be a dancer, but no, there are
Right.
so many positions behind the camera that are
Yeah.
open and available,
Mhm.
that I feel like students of color just have no concept of what those positions are because they don't know anybody that looks like them that works in those positions.
I had the same experience, even though I wasn't an army brat. I was just in Houston, Texas, and I'm old enough that there was no internet. So I just didn't know what I didn't know what wasn't there. I didn't know until my senior year of college that screenwriters existed, which is why I decided to go to film school for grad school because I had just learned it at age
Mm-hmm.
21 what what a screenwriter was. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's all about the resources. And now we're in a time where everybody thinks they have to be a screenwriter because now that people know Shonda Rhimes exists,
Yes.
and they know Lena Waithe, now everybody thinks they need to be a screenwriter, still not realizing there are so many other positions that are creative that
Mm-hmm.
may lend to your task, lend to your skill set more than being a screenwriter. So there's just so much information for people to know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I love our discussion. For anybody out there that was watching, definitely please comment, like, and subscribe. And you can follow Shannan at the Professional Pen on Instagram. Any final words, Shannan?
No, just keep writing if that's what you're doing. If you're not writing, keep doing whatever it is that you're doing, or remember that every day you wake up is an opportunity to do something different.
Well said. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.